Welcome back to You and Your Money. We are discussing retirement and financial planning, but I'm concentrating at this stage to the two-pot system. My guest is Hetty Joubert. If you'd like to email me, my email address is info@anchorcapital.co.za. Before I get into emails, two further questions. What happens if the member dies?
Nothing changes from what the current position is. So if the member dies, the beneficiaries can take everything in a lump sum, or they can take a portion of it as a lump sum and a portion as annuity, or they can take everything as an annuity.
Okay.
So nothing changes.
Second question, people over the age of 55. There was some ruling as at the first in 2021, and now there's a different ruling come 2024.
Okay, so the over 55s only apply to Provident Fund members. So the criteria is you must have been a member of a Provident Fund on the 1st of March 2021, 55 on that date, and on the 1st of September this year, still a member of that same fund. Not a Provident Fund, the exact same fund. So those members are not subject to two-pot unless they say they want to be in. So they are out until they opt in. And there are two tax laws that needed to be, two tax amendment acts. The first one was signed into law. The second one still has to be signed into law. So the second one says that those over 55 members will have 12 months within which they can opt in and still get seeding. If at any time thereafter you opt in, you're just not going to get the seeding, but you can still opt in. But it's very unlikely that you would want to do that because the 55 members are so close to retirement. So, I mean, why would you want to access a portion of your money if you can wait a little bit and get everything?
And Hetty, what's going to happen to that savings pot from an investment point of view? Who's going to make the call? Because at the moment, you're governed by the rules. The trustees make the calls on how your funds are going to be invested. They may have different methods for older people closer to retirement. But here's someone who's 35 years old. He's got his vested portion. That will be invested as previously. He's now got the 2/3 going to retirement, and he's got the 1/3 going to saving. What happens if he doesn't want that savings, but he wants it invested in the same method and same type of strategy as previous?
There's a difference between members of pension and provident funds and members of retirement annuity and preservation funds. So the latter are classified as retail funds, and generally in those funds members have individual member choice. So as a member, if I know that I'm not going to take money out of my savings component, I wouldn't want to invest it in any other way than I invest the rest of my money. But if in an occupational fund, a pension and a provident fund, if the trustees of the fund know that a lot of members are going to access money, it would be prudent for them to have an investment strategy for the savings component that doesn't have any penalties if you have early withdrawals. So they will probably go into something that's more liquid, where it's easier for the members to get the money out. They don't have to, but it is something that they have to take into consideration.
So there's going to be a lot of communication between the fund managers and the employee. Is this an employee responsibility, or is this going to be at fund level?
The funds have to communicate this to members. Incidentally, if you submit your rule amendments to the FECA, one of the things that they ask for is to see the member communication that you sent out. They want to see that you have communicated to members. And not only communicate, tell them about two-pot, but you have to tell them what the negative consequences will be if they do take out a portion of their benefit now. Because in the long term, it is going to be to the detriment of the members, especially those that, as it is, don't have a savings culture anyway, and they don't have enough money put away. They have to appreciate that if you take from yourself now, you're actually stealing from your future self. Because you might not have enough money to retire on because you took something now. And remember, people very quickly get used to something. So if you, in your first year that you can get access to money, if you tell yourself, oh, I desperately need this money now. Next year, you don't have to tell yourself that lie anymore. You are already used to it. And the next year thereafter, this is now you paying yourself a bonus every year by taking everything out of your savings component. So don't get used to it. Don't take it if you don't need it.
And also, just to explain to our viewers, it's the same. If whatever you put in is tax deductible, and now whatever you come out is going to be taxable.
Yes.
Hetty, just one important thing that does come to mind when you're talking about the two-pot system. there's going to be, if you do make use of it, it's going to have a major impact ultimately on your retirement.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because there's no compounding effect of money invested. We know.
A lot of members use their lump sums when they get to retirement to pay off things like their house and a car. But if you take all of that out, you're not going to have that lump sum because you're not allowed to take your retirement component as a lump sum unless the total in that retirement component plus 2/3 of your vested component is less than 165,000.
165,000.
Yeah. But if it's over that, then you have to annuitize. So you're not going to get a lump sum.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to some emails. Please, if you've got any questions, you can always contact Hetty at JLaw. We'll get up your email address, Hetty. Hetty, just quickly, you've moved from a very senior position to Momentum. What does JLaw do?
Consulting. So I've decided to establish a company with my son. He's based in Cape Town. I'm based in Centurion. So I focus mainly on consulting to retirement funds. So I've been doing a lot of rule amendments for the two-pot system. And then my son focuses mostly on labor law issues. So he does disciplinary hearings and contracts for clients down in Cape Town.
Well, first email for you, Hetty, is from Julian in Poundtown. He says, please explain how I can draw from a retirement annuity. So is retirement annuity treated exactly the same as a pension and provident fund?
Absolutely, exactly the same.
Well, that's easy enough. Itamoling in Durban says, I have funds invested that I want to leave to my 3 nieces for education. How should my will be drawn up? And is there a need for a trust? And if so, then who do I choose as the trustees? And can my executor be a trustee? So let's deal with it a lot. An executor can be a trustee.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes he can.
Yeah.
He
How
can.
does he draw up his will now? He's got 3 nieces he wants to leave money to.
It's easy. You can establish a testamentary trust. So you can say, when I die, I want all the money in my estate to go into a trust. This is the purpose of the trust. These are the trustees and these are the beneficiaries. Just remember, when you set up a trust, don't just set up a trust because you have to appreciate that there are a lot of admin that needs to be done around the trust. And if it's not done properly, you can mess up the intention very, very badly. I saw a lot of trusts that were mismanaged, not intentionally, just because people don't appreciate that there are certain governance functions around a trust. It's not the normal stuff that you do for yourself. And a trust is not an extension of yourself. It's a totally separate legal entity, and it has to be administered like that.
So let's go. Let me take this question and deal with something. So this gentleman wants to leave money. Itamoling wants to leave money to his 3 nieces. Mm-hmm. He's now got a retirement fund. So he now leaves it to his 3 nieces. However, 2 are dependent on him. 1 isn't dependent on him.
Are those his only dependents?
Yes, those are only dependents.
Okay, so what the trustees of the fund will do is firstly to look at what the...
Firstly, they won't just go by what he thinks is a benefit. It's a letter of wishes.
Yeah, it's a wish list. It's a wish list. So, but it's a good starting point, because what we will then do as a trustee, let's say I'm the trustee of the fund, I will look at what the dependency needs are of the people that qualify as dependents. So the beneficiaries are those 3, of which 2 are financially dependent. Then if he can still do a nomination and say, I want the benefit to be distributed equally between the 3 of them. Once the financial dependency needs of the 2 dependents have been met, then the trustees can decide what they want to do with the balance, if there is a balance. So they can then either pay the total balance to the other one, or they can split it equally between the 3 of them. They can do anything they want to, but the first thing that they must do is make sure the financial dependency needs of the dependents are met as far as possible, 100%. And then you can look at non-dependent.
Okay, so the 3rd niece could get nothing.
Potentially she can.
So maybe you've got to understand that dependency, talk to someone like yourself to understand how you actually do it and what other provisions you could make from other assets to take care of that 3rd niece where it's not governed by, I think, 37C.
Yeah, the easiest way is if you're over 55, retire, purchase a living annuity, nominate whoever you want. The moment the money is in a living annuity, nobody has any say over it except you. So you decide who the nominees are, you nominate them, and nobody can argue about that.
So you could retire. You could then, by the way, whatever you got to take 2.5%. you could then put that 2.5% back into a retirement annuity
Yes,
and
yes.
tax neutral.
Yep.
Barbara in East London says, are government bonds safe investment? Well, let me deal with that. Firstly, just remember one thing: governments bail out banks. Banks don't bail out governments. And if we go back to 2008, 2009, it's very clear what happened. The banks got into enormous trouble all over the world. Government bailed them out. Then you need to understand that there are different types of bonds. There are government bonds that have fluctuating values, and there are government retail bonds, which you can buy 2, 3, and 5-year government retail bonds. The government retail bonds guarantees your capital, guarantees your income. Government bonds, which are different to government retail bonds, also have, depending on interest rates, depending on values, they change every day. Government bonds are traded more in the market than equities, and every day, depending on interest rates, those bonds change. But am I worried about South African government bond? No, I'm really not. Well, I think we've come to the end of the program. Hetty, thank you for sharing us your knowledge. I think we will let them know. If anyone wants to know where to get hold of you, I'll let them know, particularly employers who may talk about, don't know whether their rules have been changed or whatever the case may be. But anyhow, would you act would you take on roles as a trustee of pension funds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it all depends on how the fund is run. I am not going to put my neck on the line and become a trustee of a fund where I can potentially end up in jail. That's not going to
Well, by the way, who would want to be a trustee
No,
in
absolutely.
any trust because of the responsibilities?
Yeah.
The South African government has always encouraged its citizens to save money for retirement. On the one hand, giving individuals financial freedom, but on the other, to reduce the burden on the government. There are all kinds of tax benefits to encourage employees to contribute towards a retirement fund. I fully understand the need for many to make use of the two-pot retirement system, but they do need to get advice for 2 reasons. How will this affect your retirement? And 2, to understand what the tax implications are when drawing from the fund. Again, Hetty, thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you later in the year again. It's important to note that our program tonight is to provide information and should not be construed as advice. Next week's program will be back on healthcare, and if you need to get hold of me, my details will appear on the screen. I'd like to thank you for watching, and good night.